Well, thank you to all for attending this morning on our discussion on multi-pay and the benefits to families. We are going to try to answer any questions that you have with regards to multi-pay and why we want to offer it. We'll talk a little bit about some of the myths as to why people don't offer multi-pay on a regular basis and show you some examples of how you can make it easy to offer and explain to your families how to offer the multi-pay products better. So let's begin here. A little bit about myself. My name is Andy Wenninger. I have been in the pre-need arena since 1996, working for a number of different funeral homes of various sizes. I've had the opportunity to market extensively and be able to work with families to help them to achieve their goal of getting that funeral funded. In this process, being able to offer options to folks to meet their needs is essential. Let's talk a little bit as we get started about the myths of multi-pay. Many funeral homes that I visit and talk to have some questions or issues when we start talking about multi-pay. And the first one that often comes up is, but it costs more for the individual or the family to pay for their funeral. And while that may seem like it is the case, there is more out of pocket. In an explanation that I've often made to families while discussing multi-pay is, if you do nothing today, let's say the individual I'm sharing with them multi-pay of 10 years, their funeral is $10,000, and over the 10 years, it's common for them to pay twice the amount of what the funeral costs. My common answer to that is, if you do nothing today and you come back to me in 10 years, based on what we have seen with inflation and based on what the National Funeral Directors Association states, that funerals double about every 10 years, you're going to end up paying the same amount at that point 10 years later. And why not have the coverage now, while and in place now, where you never may pay the cost of the funeral off based on how an individual potentially would answer the health questions. So that's one of the first things that we discuss, or that comes up. The second one that I've run into is persistency. And that basically boils down to, what if they stop paying? I sell this product and then they stop paying, and it hasn't helped the family at all. But we can answer that persistency in how it's sold to the client. We have to remember, when we're offering this, when we're educating them on what their options are, all we're doing is showing options. Let the client choose what's comfortable to them, what makes sense to them. If they do that, they'll be much happier in making that purchase, and that product will stay in force, and we won't have the persistency issues. Now, will you have some? Sure. On occasion, depending on how it's set up, you can have some persistency issues. What I encourage with all multi-pay plans is that they get set up through an EFT, an electronic fund transfer, where the money comes directly out of a checking or savings account. That way, you're not having to deal with the issues that arise because somebody decides to write a check a day late, or the fact that somebody got it into the mail and it took longer to get to the insurance company, or they were away for a week when the bill was due. All of this gets solved by setting it up as an EFT. So I tried to do all of my multi-pay that way. In fact, I tried to do most of my single pay via EFT so that I could get it to the carrier that much quicker, and the client would get their policy that much quicker and remember what we had done to get this set up. The third myth that I like to talk about is, well, now I'm becoming a salesperson. I'm this notorious insurance salesperson. And I don't want to, you know, discount that thought process, because in reality we are salespeople, whether we're selling that service, that funeral home ourselves. We are some type of salesperson. But remember, more importantly, we're educators, and we're educating people and families on what their options are. We're not telling them you should do this, you should do this, this is what, but if we present it as, here's what your options are, and let them make the choice of what they want to do. So in my practice, I would always start off with the family planning guide, gathering the vital statistics on an individual. I would then work up an estimate for their funeral on what their options were, and get to a price together for them. And once that was accomplished, let's just use that figure of $10,000. Then I would turn that around to them and show them what the estimate was. I would then flip over my estimate sheet, and I would show them and write $10,000 on the top and say, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, today your funeral comes to $10,000, and you have several options with how to get this taken care of. The first option, and many people choose this option, is to do a single pay policy. The funeral is paid for all at one time. You never have to think about making another payment. But there are some payment options that are available. And let me explain what they are and the benefits that are associated with making those payment plans. And then I would go through, usually showing them the least expensive option on a monthly basis, which, in depending on the carrier that you choose, may be a 10-year monthly payment. That's commonly what I would start with, is that 10-year monthly payment. And when I would do that, then I would write that number down. I would also then show them what their total out of pocket would be over the course of 10 years. So multiply that monthly payment by 120 payments and give them. In the state where I worked, here in Wisconsin, it was required by law that we show the total outlay over that 10-year period. So I would show them that. And then I just, turn it to them and let them think about it and say, maybe this meets your budget. Maybe you can afford to do a little more. And so there are options that are available. Again, it's just educating people on what their options are. In this process, we need to educate those individuals on why multi-pay is beneficial. So with single pay, we know a funeral's paid for all at one time, done. And for most funeral homes who are doing a passive kind of pre-need business, they're taking the walk-ins that come through the door. Most of those are focused on medical assistance spend down. And so single pay is most commonly what is written. But when we do, you're always going to get the walk-ins that come through the door that are coming there not because of medical assistance, or it is because someone in their family has had a change and it sparked a thought in their mind that they need to do it. Or if we're doing some active marketing, and I've had a lot of success doing seminars, and during the seminar process, I actually explain the options of multi-pay and why it's beneficial. And so that's where now, when I'm working one-on-one with families, we explain what those options are. So you take that $10,000 funeral and you break that price down into, and I'll use myself as an example, $134 a month for 10 years using the carrier that I chose. I can answer the health questions no, so I get immediate day one coverage. And then over that time period, should something happen to me at any time during that, if I died, my funeral would be completely paid for. And I'm making that explanation to the client that's sitting across from me. So, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Here's what your payment is. You can answer the health questions. No, that means you have immediate day one coverage available to you, so that if something happens at any time during this process, your funeral will be completely paid for, and you may never pay off the cost of what it is today. So there's a benefit to the client. They're able to hang on to their money wherever it is sitting and have that coverage available to them and that protection to their family. We do this in many ways with different types of insurance. Think of our homeowners insurance or our car insurance. We don't pay it all at one time. We pay it on a monthly basis. Or maybe some of us pay it on an annual basis to reduce the cost a little bit, but it's there to protect us through the entire course. We don't lay down 10 years or 20 years of homeowners insurance or car insurance at one time. We pay for it as we go. And it's the same here. They're able to get it done a little bit at a time. Now, one of the things that has become so nice with a couple of our top rated carriers, I started in the pre-need with multi-pay before this was available, where you paid almost double over the course of 10 years, and based on the growth in the policy, maybe you weren't getting that full amount back. But today, two of our wonderful carriers, top carriers, have a return of premium product that's associated with multi-pay. So I'm going to show a couple of examples here very shortly, but National Guardian Life and Great Western both have a return of premium multi-pay. Well, what's the benefit of something like that? Well, let's say I pay double over the course of a 10-year period on that $10,000 funeral. With both of those products, they're going to receive the greatest of three sums: the face amount of the policy, the face amount plus growth, or the return of all of their premium. And so that benefits the client. They're setting aside that money on a regular basis. They're covered. If they answer no to the health question, they have that immediate day one coverage. So if something would happen at any point, their funeral is completely paid for. Let's say they have to answer yes to the health question. Now they have limited coverage the first 2 years. Each company sets that amount separately. With National Guardian Life, it's set the first year at this amount, the second year at a separate amount. With Great Western, it's an increasing scale over the course of that 24 months of a percentage of their face amount. But once they hit that 2-year anniversary, they then are completely covered. So let's take the average age, let's say an average age of someone that you're working with on pre-need being, let's say, 70 years old or 72 years old. They do a $10,000 policy over 10 years. Yes, they're going to pay that amount of money, that $20,000 roughly, without running the actual calculation here. And about year 5 or 6, depending on the company, they're going to have paid in on their premiums more than the face amount plus growth. And at that point, that's that dollar figure that family is going to receive. So all you're doing is educating the client on what their options are. Now, both companies, National Guardian Life and Great Western, have made it very easy today to show people options quickly. When I started back in the day, we used to have to do those calculations by hand. We'd have rate sheets and you'd run calculations for 10 years. And then, Mr. and Mrs. Smith would say, well, I could probably afford more. What would be the 5-year payment? And then you'd be running all of those calculations. And at that time, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they're 3 or 4 or 5 years just separate in age. So I can't just run one set of numbers. I'd have to run 2 sets of numbers. Well, the calculators that are available from both National Guardian Life and Great Western make it very easy for us to show people their options in a simple way. And I'm going to kind of show you what those are set up as. So I just took a couple of screenshots of the calculator. Here we are showing the example of National Guardian Life's calculator. I have set this up in this fashion where we're showing the state that I currently, write in Wisconsin or work in Wisconsin. Series 15 is National Guardian Life's return of premium product. I set up as a health question or an age of 50, answering the health question yes. They have health issues. We're setting up the funeral amount of 4119. No bump in this situation. But you'll see here that we've got some options up at the top. The nice thing is if I take my phone and I rotate it, now I can show them all three options, 3, 5, and 10-year options. And if I want to change to monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually, it's as easy as changing that tab, clicking on that arrow, dropping the box down, choosing that. It will change all of that immediately. So I can turn that calculator to the client and say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, here are your options. Tell me what fits into your budget the best. What is going to work for you? Again, it's just that education process as to what will help them work through this. Great Western's calculator is set up a little bit different. I'll kind of show you that. Again, you've got the funeral amount up at the top. We've got the age. We've got the state that you work in. You have the ability to choose first day coverage. That means they can answer the health question no. Um, uh, Great Western has a grandchild rider that in the state of Wisconsin, there's an extra fee for. So if I check that button, they also have an away from home rider. If I check that button, with Great Western, their Voyage product deals with the multi-pay, and that's the return of premium. Then down at the bottom, once I do that, I hit the calculate button, and that calculates. So I've got a $10,000 funeral at the age I had set up. It was $215. That included the $10 grandchild rider, as well as the $10 away from home. Those were again the initial amount that's paid to the agent. The modal premium is what they'll pay on a monthly basis going forward. The nice thing here is in Wisconsin, because I'm required to show them, I don't even have to run a separate calculation. My $23,000 or $2,360 first year premium calculates out for the full 10 years and shows me that amount. Again, it's simple and easy to be able to show the client what their options are. If that option doesn't meet their requirements, then you can go back into the results, go to the back arrow, change to a different plan, and be able to show them a different option very simply and easily to make sure that the client understands what their options are. Again, not so much selling as educating people on what their options are and allowing them to make the choice that they feel most comfortable with. If we do this, we'll have that opportunity to sell more multi-pay. It's extremely beneficial to, in this situation, to the client because they're not laying out all of their money at one time. I see that right now, especially, there are times where the market is depressed extensively, the stock market, and people aren't earning a lot of money in different areas, and so spending it all at one time or setting it aside at one time isn't a big issue. But there are times when their investments, where their money is set aside, either can't be touched at this point because you're limited, or the market's doing so well and they don't want to move all of their money out of a set investment. This allows them to do it a little bit at a time, and they can see the benefit of, I've got that protection during this time, but I haven't taken all of my money. So let's use an example. A recent investment that I was talking to a client with has averaged this year about 20% in growth. Well, why would somebody pull all $10,000 out of that to put it into something that's growing at far less of an amount. Yeah, I'd rather keep my money working in that investment and pay a little bit at a time. Worst case scenario, something happens, I die in the first year, 2 or 3 of that plan, my funeral is completely taken care of. So we're able to set up those options for families and help them. Um, and in working with a number of clients, they've seen that benefit of not having to take it all at one time. The other area that I've used multi-pay in is, no doubt you've had clients walk in and you get through the process and they say, great, well, I've got this CD coming due in 6 months or in 9 months, and I want to pay for my funeral when that CD comes due. I've used multi-pay in this process, not this product, the return of premium product, but the standard product from NGL, the Series 4, or the standard product from Great Western that allows an early payoff option. So NGL's early payoff option is 6 months, same as cash. So if the client says, I've got this CD coming due in 6 months, I'd say, great. Well, why don't we set this up as a multi-pay? You do a semi-annual premium now. In 6 months, when your CD comes due, that we'll take that at that point and we'll pay off the remainder of the funeral, and it won't cost you anything extra to do. You've got the protection in place now, and as you move forward, you have the option to pay it off early and not pay off the total. In the past, a number of the companies, and they still have them, early payoff options that even you can take out to a year or two. There's usually some small additional cost, administrative fee that's required to do that. But I would tell the client, here's the benefit to you. And I do this with all of my clients is, we're going to do a 1 year payoff. You've got this CD, or you got this money coming due, or you've got money that's got to come out of a 401k, your, required minimum distribution that comes out. Let's take that money and pay this off at that time. But before we do that, because there's a form that I'm going to have you sign anyway, I want to be able to sit down with you and see how you're doing, because it may make sense to pay it off, but it may not. Let's say suddenly, worst case scenario, the client was diagnosed with something that may end their life in the next year or two. It makes no sense at that point to do an early payoff. We want to continue them in this process because they're going to pay far less. Again, just making sure that we educate people on all of their options so that they're happy with that decision that they're making. So that's kind of how I would present multi-pay products. They're a wonderful boon to the funeral home in the fact that you're helping more families, offering it to more families. They're great for the family, especially because they're getting something taken care of, even if they can't afford to out of pocket come up with, we'll just use that number of $10,000. They still get something started and they get that protection in place. Plus, they get that with the return of premium product, they get that money that flows back to pay for the funeral. And the funeral home benefits, thirdly, because they're able to have, especially with the return of premium product, a larger amount to work with. And that helps the family even more so because that money is there and set aside for the funeral. So it really does make sense to be able to offer a multi-pay product to client to meet all of their needs. So I just wanted to open it up at this point to see if there were any questions that I could answer on multi-pay products. I seem to have answered all your questions, which I'm glad about. Please feel free that if you have any questions going forward, to reach out. You're happy to reach out to me. My email address is Andy, ANDY, .Weninger, WENINGER, at Premier, PREMIERS as in Sam, M as in Mary, I as in Igloo, .com. I do have one question. Is there a paper app for this or is it online? Both companies, National Guardian Life and Great Western, offer both paper apps for this or an electronic app for it. It can be done either way. Um, Easy to do, or another option is both companies offer fillable PDF forms that you can use for this. It's just a matter of checking the appropriate boxes. So with National Guardian Life's product, it's two separate applications. For Series 4 is single pay. That's an application. Series 15 has its own multi-pay. On Great Western's product, the app is both there, on the same page, multi-pay and single pay. Approval, another good question. All of these products are what are called field underwritten. So each company does this a little bit differently. National Guardian Life does their background check once the policy is in force, and should a death occur during that 2-year look back period, they will do some investigation at that time to make sure that the questions were answered correctly. Uh, uh, Great Western requests on their app your doctor's information. Again, it doesn't lengthen the approval time. Both companies issue policies usually in a 48-hour period. All of their checking with regards to health occurs should the death occur within that 2-year period of time. So it doesn't take that approval any longer than it would for a single pay policy for the client. I hope that answers that question. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can also call me. My phone number is area code 920-279-8447. We will have this webinar. It is being recorded, so it will be made available, so you can re-listen if you have missed something. Again, thank you very much for your time this morning, and we look forward to being of assistance to you. Our Preneed marketing team here with Premier is happy to help any way that we can. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.